Snake Goddess video 2. Let's get right into it. So last video I did our figure here, the rear of the figure. Now what I've done is took my original drawing from paper. So we're gonna mess up the camera there. And spent a few hours and transposed that in Sharpie onto the actual piece of brass here. So now I'm ready to start chiseling in all the relief work, or chiseling in the negatives and popping up the positives to create the shape here. I will be doing that into a lead block. So I made a little steel box, poured it full of lead, and that it will be my backer for this, provide sufficient backer to be able to move it on there quickly and still have a nice stiff backer for it. So this is kind of like a etch-a-sketch. I can hammer into it, and then when I'm done with it, I just kind of hammer out those depressions and smooth it out. So not really like an etch-a-sketch, but it's about the same size and shape. All right, so let's get right into it. I'm going to now clamp this onto the table, and the camera is going to come in over my shoulder, I'm hoping. Okay, so not real complex situation here. I've got a dull cold chisel, and I'm just outlining all my Sharpie marks, pushing that down. These guys will be raised lines. The Cuneiform, which I'll discuss in a little bit, will be depressed in there, so that will be a negative thing going into the block, or into the sheet. So it's just going to be several hours of me tapping away on this stuff to create those lines. Okay, so this is part of a secret project. If you happen to be a member of my Patreon page, if you're one of my patrons, I am revealing what this is behind the scenes, but for you guys in the cheap seats here, you're just seeing me work on different components of this larger project. What this is a panel, and I'm using Cuneiform here. Basically, you can see you've got a bunch of radiating lines here. I'm trying to create a I don't know, sacred geometry sort of thing, something that is evocative of magic. Inspiration would be like Aleister Crowley from 100 years ago. His sex magic with a K. And you know, the kind of stuff that he was doing in the symbolism, using Cuneiform, which is an ancient form of writing from Babylon, Sumer, I should say, and you know, basically the Mesopotamian valley there. So a very ancient form of writing. This is one of the earliest forms of writing, I guess, really. It's not hieroglyphics, it's not pictographs, but it's not alphabet either. It's somewhere in between, kind of like Chinese, I guess, because there's, I think, hundreds of characters to create the sounds so that they can do the words, but they could create whole stories and stuff like that, and very articulate in this form of writing, using a bunch of little cone-shaped, tapered shapes. And yeah, so that's what I'm doing here. So I find that just creating a lot of radiating lines here and trying to create this sort of geometry here, you can see there's triangles and circles and things like that, that it just kind of evokes this sort of divine proportion thing. Doesn't really mean anything. Everything I'm doing here is gibberish. The Cuneiform is just random markings, but it's trying to create the imagery of something that is like this ancient evil, or it's just hinting at something that, you know, is can't really fully be understood or realized here. So that's what I'm going for there. Artistically, it's just going to be a lot of work. So depending how much time I actually want to spend on this, I want to keep it crude, but at the same time refined. So I'm just going to have to play it out and see how refined I want to make this. I'd like it to look very ancient and crude, like we're going to Mesopotamia. So we're going back 3,500, 4,000 year kind of time frame is what I'm trying to make this look like. Several hours have elapsed and I have roughed out all the lines. I've delineated everything I need to. This is tedious AF. And I've just begun. So what I need to do now, everything is all distorted, on also work hardened. So I need to anneal it, and then I'm going to go over to my stake and actually raise up the highs and lows. Well, you'll see, just watch. Okay, so I did a pass over my stake here. I should point out I was working off of this here. And as always, I'm not hammering with the hammer onto the stake, I'm hammering just beyond it. You get any of that?
Yes.
Okay. So, just gone over everything and I've pushed out the lines that I want to be in bold. The cuneiform is still in going inwards, so it's into the negative there, and it's gotten fairly fuzzy, almost illegible, and everything has actually become rather blurry, but at least I've got my highs and lows established. You can see the triangle here in the inner triangle is dropped in, and then these guys are going to be bulging out, so we're getting a hint of how everything is going to be height-wise, topographically speaking. Now it's just sharpening it up. So what I'm going to do is go and anneal one more time and then back to the lead block and another pass of refining the detail. Hi. So about 8 hours have elapsed and I've done a fair bit of work on this and it continues on and on. So at this point now I'm just chiseling out some of the outcuts where I'm going to be putting some copper in there. So you can see here, for example, I've got these 3 orbs or little domed shapes. There's going to be a copper backer there to create this crescent moon shape down here. And right now I am cutting out the vortexes, little pieces here, and I'm doing that with a cold chisel over a ball and just using the chisel to cut through until it starts tearing out, and then I pull it out. So it's about as awkward as it sounds in the description, and the worst thing is that it scars up my balls. You heard me. Why are you snickering? Yes, it scars up my balls, so I'm gonna have to clean those up afterwards and get my balls looking nice and shiny again. Anyway, so I've spent about, I would say, a full 8 hours just on the cuneiform writing, going in and then working from the back and forth to sharpen that up to the degree that I now have it here. And I will just present everything, and Eric, you just tell me if this is showing well. Okay, so we'll just take a quick peek at what's going on here. Things are coming along quite nicely, but I am at a 20 hours in, 22, 23 hours maybe into this, and it goes on, and I'll probably spend another 6 or 8 hours today getting it finished off, and it'll just get to the point where I'm just going to abandon it. This is the kind of thing that you could go on indefinitely and really just keep refining and refining, but everything I do distorts something else, so I've just need to get it to a point where everything is more or less as precise as I want it, and then get it to the finished shape and go from there. So yeah. Now, incidentally, before I forget, we'll be getting into this a little bit later, but we're calling this a snake goddess, and I've got these tails here which will be fitted on here, and I have to make the hands. I'll have to cut these pieces and make the hands with little holes there to receive the snake there. I'll show you where this is all going. It's fitting in there better. So these are these are about half formed now. They have to conform to the shape that's coming up. So the actual forged steel piece is sitting over top of the brass. And then I'll have, as I said, copper pieces coming through. So there's quite a bit of variety of things going on here. I think it's a fairly interesting piece. Also today, I wore my Slipknot shirt just as I was talking the other day when we were talking about making sacred geometry and trying to use angles and shapes and radiating lines and stuff like that to create that sinister mystery. So here's a perfect example here with Slipknot shirt here with, you've got basically like almost, it looks like some sort of star thing in there, and all the degrees and everything is kind of hinting at some sort of mathematical, I don't know. Anyway, it's some sort of hidden science, this arcane evil formula that it just basically underlies all of reality, something that we're not quite seeing here, because we're lost in the matrix or whatever. So all that kind of bullshit. Anyway, that was kind of the effect that I'm trying to go for with this, is just to evoke that sinister, sense of foreboding and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if I'm capturing it but a pretty cool piece nonetheless. So here we go. Lots of work to do. Let's get into it. Okay, so I have now done my cutouts and put copper backers in. And when I finish this whole thing, I think the copper I'll bring up to buff. It's already plannish, so it'll have some texture in it, but buffed out to be quite a contrast. And then the brass is probably going to have a finish much like in the triangle here, where it's going to be a rustic patina on it, so I want to get a good contrast there. You see I polished out our chick here. I wanted to smooth her out. Her skin was actually pretty scarred up and dimpled, and I didn't really want the cellulite effect. I wanted to have a nice smooth nubile young thing. So got her smooth there. So I'm just trying to work out my various contrasts that I'm going to have with this. I think what I'm looking at there, the cuneiform down there, probably something like that, where I'll have, when I antique it, it'll be blackened, so quite black in the depressions, and then buffed out on the highlights, and that's virtually the finish that I should end up with overall on this thing here. I also, if you'll notice, I ghosted in some lines here in cuneiform, just lightly chiseled right in there, which I think was a really cool effect, and I ended up actually putting it across her back here as a tattoo. I think I need to go back and deepen that, but I thought that was kind of a cool effect where I'm tying this one radiating line all the way across here, but breaking up into a snake. So I think some pretty cool stuff that is more than worthy of just a single glance, where you can kind of come in, take a look at it, and then study it, and then just, you know, kind of see different things emerging as you go along. I also put an eye down here at the bottom triangle, so basically an inverted pyramid with the, what do they call that thing, the eye on the dollar bill there, the all-seeing eye. So I think, you know, I'm just again trying to put in a sense of mystery there. So that's, I thought, was kind of a cool little effect. I got my vortex up here in the copper, and I think it's all working out very nicely. Now what I'm going to do is get the forge going, and my forged tail pieces here, I need to start fitting them in. So I've got them about 80% fitted here. I need to finish the curvature here, and then I need to start sculpting the hands and making little hollows. I'll have to cut this tail in order to weave in and out of there. So I anticipate much fuckery with that step, but let's get into it and see how it goes. All right, just before we do the grand reveal, I just want to show you some of the surfaces that I was working on. This particular process involved a variety of different work surfaces. So let's just come down to the table and take a look at those. So in the last video when I did the female figure, I did this using my pitch board. So this is pine pitch here, and that was the backer that we used in traditional repousse sort of workings. When I got to the cuneiform and I'm working with essentially a flat panel, I needed something to be able to put those characters into the metal. I needed something with a more solid backing than the pitch. So what I made was this little lead board. Basically it's just a little pan that I poured lead into. I just heated it up on the forge and melted enough lead in to fill that up. So that created a surface that had pretty stiff resistance and allowed me to work into, and it would just conform to the shapes that I was doing. You can kind of actually make out the cuneiform in there. Went over that several times, and we've just kind of got this, you know, it's ghosting through there. Another surface that I used was this piece here, which is a piece of softwood stump. Well, it's a beam. It was an end cut off a soft beam. I think this is actually fir, I believe it is. Anyway, I did a steel banding around it, and the thing was splitting and opening up, and basically compressed it. So the whole thing is compressed and held in place, but what you've got is soft end grain here, which gives a resistance which is a little bit less than the lead, but not as crumbly as the pitch. So this, I just find it's great to have a number of options, and depending where you are in the process, you can move from one to the other. At the far end of the spectrum then would be the shot bag. This is a brand new lead shot bag that I just got. It was a Christmas present from Fish, my assistant. One of the best Christmas presents I've ever received. Pretty cool. So anyway, this is a shot bag here, and you've seen me use this in past videos many times. And this is allows you to actually dish pieces out. So this gives quite a low resistance in comparison to the wood or the lead, different than the pitch, but between the four of them, that gives me a whole spectrum of possibilities to be able to make stuff. Incidentally, for the cuneiform and basically all the lines on the panel, didn't use much more than these chisels here. So I don't know if we can get a tight focus on this. So did a lot with the very fine chisel, but again, this is not super sharp. It's dulled over, but as it gets finer and finer, you can do some pretty crisp detail with it. So there we go. So now, without further ado, let us do the grand reveal. I don't know about you, the viewer, but personally, I am thrilled with the result. This is exactly what I was going for. I wanted something that had a very, I don't know, beaten up, rustic appeal to it, but something that really kind of evoked the whole Mesopotamian, even Egyptian kind of artwork that you see in archaeology. So there we go. I'm happy. I think it worked out really well. You can see the cuneiform, how I was able to push that in, and then when I antiqued it all, it kind of darkened that out, and I just buffed out the highlights. These three orbs that I made here, I did them with some very rudimentary fretwork where I've done cutouts and I put copper in behind as a contrast there, which I think it's a subtle contrast, but at the same time, it's a nice juxtaposition and gives you visual interest. Also, we have our steel forged snake tails here coming down, and you see the way I did it so that it went, the hand is gripping and around. I thought that was a pretty cool detail there. So going from relief sculpture to full-on 3D sculpture, I think it's a cool effect. And realizing you as the YouTube viewer are not understanding the whole context of where this panel is going, and you won't be seeing that until a year or two from the time of this filming here when I actually finish this project. If you want to learn more about that, you have to become one of my patrons on Patreon. So you want to get behind the scenes, then you're going to have to support me there. Anyway, that's it for this particular video. More to come. Please subscribe. Please leave your comments below. I'm curious to get feedback on this one. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart. And likes, you guys know what to do. Anyway, that's it for me. Thak out. See ya!